So as I was thinking about that challenge in of itself, that seemed pretty daunting. And it sort of speaks to one of, I think, the 4 things that the brain attempts to do. But it's the last, I think, that I'm going to talk about, because what I want to do is take a biological perspective. I was trained as a biologist, and so I think of the brain in much the same way as I think of the heart or the kidneys. They are organs that solve particular problems. So as I might just pick, before I go to the brain, the heart, because that's somewhat neutral to the conversation so far, but it probably has a lot to do with your lives. Knowledge that we have about how the heart works has influenced all kinds of things about our lives, including what we eat, what we don't eat, how often we exercise, etc. Now there are people who wear Fitbits, that they can figure out how fast their heart is working. So this kind of information about the heart has been very useful in making decisions about how we maintain our health. So it's sort of the same perspective I use for the brain. What are the problems that the brain is trying to solve? So I was, again, thinking about this as a sort of a 15-minute kind of overview, but it's like an optic, I think, or a perspective that I use, because clearly in 15 minutes I'm not going to get at the neuroscience people in education. But we can frame it out a little bit. The first thing I think to say about the brain is globally it solves 4 kinds of problems. One is spatial, and that is, what do I do with my body right now, at this moment? Keep it upright. When do I use my hands? And if it's conscious and if it's unconscious, where do I turn my head? How do I keep myself upright, etc. And a lot of this is really informed by our senses. And so what we have is a brain that is heavily dedicated to sensory motor experiences, using our senses to make sense of the world so that we can operate in the world. Not run into walls, know how to approach an escalator, for example. I use that example a lot because I think it's kind of cool that the escalator that doesn't work, as you approach it, you step on it, and it still surprises your body, even though you know it doesn't work. And if you haven't had that experience, you should try it out. Because it awakens us to the idea that your brain has already prepared you for how to operate or how to work on an escalator. And when it doesn't work, it's surprising. So I'll speak about that a little bit within my 15 minutes at the very end. So a lot of spatial kinds of issues are resolved by the brain making sense of its senses. And of course we have extensive sense systems, and all of those can be discussed in books and many. But I want to sort of capture that in this book. I mean, I could have picked a lot of different books. I just picked this one. This is Cognitive Neuroscience and Neuropsychology, and there's a whole section here on how vision informs what we do, how sound, taste, etc. So this allows us to understand the way in which the brain solves sort of the spatial problems. And I use spatial just as a way, as code of moving my body in a way that keeps me out of trouble. Avoid cars, avoid walls, etc. The second thing I think the brain does, again, these are kind of global, is it makes use of emotion. And there are lots of different books. I picked this one in particular, Antonio Damasio. What I like about his work is that it does get at the issue of physiology, the experience that you might have, and what we call that experience. So you might notice that your heart is racing, but your heart may be racing because there's a bear 20 yards ahead of you. Or it may be racing because you're about to get married. They're 2 very different feelings coming out of, in his language, the physiology, which he calls emotions. So our emotional system, which is much older evolutionarily, helps us make decisions about what to do from moment to moment. Do I go left? Do I go right? These are all emotional decisions. And I would claim, like many others who are in this field, that without emotion you can't make a decision. Think about that for a while. The third thing that the brain seems to have done, and this is a little bit more recent, I think, in terms of evolution, is it has tried to solve the problem of teamwork. How is it that we can work as a team, because teamwork increases our chances of survival? And again, this is a biologist talking, so I keep thinking about this in terms of its ability to increase our chances of survival. Individually, we're pretty vulnerable. It's not like we came with claws, sharp teeth, or the enormous strength of a bear. I mean, individually, these organisms can do quite well. But as human beings, we do much better in groups. And we sort of see this through the history of humanity. And so it is interesting to think about this new view of, that's promoted by the social cognitive neuroscientists. And again, I just picked a book that kind of reflects this whole new movement. And these are the kinds of problems that people are interested in, that involve, does it benefit the group, or am I benefited in the group, yes or no, based on what I do or what others in the group decide to do. And it looks like there's been some borrowing of some more ancient circuitry that has to do with pleasure and pain, and the claim here is that the kind of pain that you feel from maybe an incision or being poked uses some of the same circuitry we feel when you are socially shamed or you've been insulted. Now this is not necessarily the same circuitry, but it seems like they share some of the same networks. And that possibly the argument that they make is that whether or not the group survives or not is the extent to which we feel better in the group or worse in the group. And, we have circuitry that I just talked about in terms of pain, but there's the flip side of that too, where a great conversation feels good, and it looks like some of the same circuitry that is involved with that feeling is involved with things like, for those who like chocolate or those who like ice cream, that some of that is shared as well. So third thing that the brain seems to be able to do for us is solve these social problems. This has, for me, a longer history, evolutionarily. The more current problem, I think, are the kinds of problems that brought us here today. These are more involve education, but they involve all kinds of problems. And I just picked one of the many books in my library to sort of reflect this. If you know this is a pretty popular book. If you look at this, it'll say things about how to teach math, how to teach science. So these are kind of cognitive problems, or how to give a talk in 15 minutes or less. In a subject that's just well, those of you who know me really well know I run a master's degree program, so that's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours that I invest in trying to get at the neuroscience as well as the cognitive science underlying learning. So these four, so symbolically, these four problems is what I'm claiming the brain has evolved to solve. Spatial, using our feelings to make decisions, trying to figure out what group is worth investing your energy in, and then all the more current, at least societal kinds of problems that we try to solve in classrooms, but not just classrooms, like the one I just mentioned, how to make this a 15-minute talk. So what I'm doing. How am I doing? Past master.
You're doing great, sir.
Now now we know what the brain does, more or less globally, but how does it do that? How does it perform? Now, I'm going to, again, this is a very complex question to answer, but I'm going to sort of reduce it down to a general algorithm, I think it's pretty well supported, that neurons and neural systems do in general, and that is they set us up to make predictions. They help us make predictions. And so, I picked another book that focuses on this specifically, although there are lots of others as well that talk about the ability to make predictions. And we do this almost seamlessly, and we need to do this seamlessly because there's so many things we have to predict, like what do I do when I get to the escalator that's not moving? Now, in some cases, or in most cases, it is moving, so I don't have to think about my prediction. My body has already made the prediction of what to do, so my body is prepared to step onto a moving escalator. Not so much prepared to step onto an escalator that's not moving. So the ability to make predictions and make predictions that are useful depends on our ability to use memory. And these two, I think, balance out the how does the brain solve these problems that I brought up in these more global problems. This is very different. What I'm going to say about memory is very different than the way that memory is normally used in school. So memory, I think, traditionally remember spelling words, remember the capitals of states, a lot of memorization that the brain can do. You can store information, but generally speaking, memory that works well with prediction is being able to know what to do with your body next, for one thing, like stepping onto the escalator. Your body already has a memory of that. Your brain has a memory of how to coordinate muscles, how much pressure to put on your foot as you move onto that escalator. All those problems have been solved partly by using memory in conjunction with prediction. So this sort of tag team works very well in navigating through life and figuring out all these other problems, like who do I want to stay within a group, or what do I do with this emotion that I've had more than once in my life, or what do I do with my body next as I approach the escalator. So these are the two hows. And I get to the very last book here in just a second, because since I had a whole bunch of books. This combination of effort, I think, is a very useful way to think about education. It's very different than knowing how Broca's area works in terms of language. I mean, these are incredibly interesting insights. But if you had to know something about the brain and make decisions about what to do in the classroom, this is the overview that I would offer you. And my colleagues and I, who've invested a lot of effort in this direction, well, we got together last year and we wrote another book. This is an edited book that I and a colleague of mine put together in research at MBE. The kinds of problems that we've tried to solve in educational contexts using the ideas that come from these other books or books that speak to the same subject. Voila.